Great question, Scott. My wife's a dietitian. I'm a physical therapist. We thought we kind of knew everything. I mean, I think I told you the story already, Scott. When I was 15, I was a freshman in high school, and I was at a 10th grade school. I thought it was God's gift to athleticism. And we had this ancient 30-year-old teacher who came into town, came in as our teacher, and he got us running, 5 miles every Friday. And one of these Fridays, he goes, guys, I'm going to run back a little faster than you guys can go, and I'll meet you back at the gym. We're going, yeah, right. I mean, he was 30, right?
Right.
And I could throw the ball farther and faster than my dad at 10 years old. So, I mean, I thought 30's over the hill. Well, he totally blasted us all the way back. And so I've always been interested in health and all that. So when this concept of oxidative stress came in, my ears are perked because I really want to hear what's going on. And my wife and I were taking an antioxidant product that got rid of 100,000 free radicals. So one direct antioxidant molecule can take out one free radical, one and done. Okay. I found out there's an average about 300 sextillion that bombard our cells every day. 300 sextillion. So if you made 100 grand a day, how would you feel? Pretty good. Yeah. But the cost is 300 sextillion.
Right.
So you're deficit spending, just like our government.
Right.
And so oxidative stress was a huge factor. In fact, if you talk to a biochemist, they would tell you essentially aging is oxidative stress. So whatever free radical can attack your cells, whatever it does that damage, that's aging essentially.
Right. It basically, the way I heard it explained is it creates a little scar when it attacks it, right? And then those scars can get bigger and may turn into something like cancer or something like that as it really kind of manifests that way. So, our body produces, I know our liver produces glutathione. So there's ways that you can, activate these pathways. And so what have you seen that works in terms of like increasing our body's production of antioxidants to fight this oxidative stress?
Yeah, that is the key, Scott, is really turning on our own endogenous, we call them enzymes. And one of those is superoxide dismutase, another is catalase, and then like you mentioned, glutathione, the mother of all antioxidants.
Right.
My wife and I had been looking into taking NAC and some other things to try to help our bodies, making glutathione. We found out that we can actually activate through nutrigenomics the genes. There's actually 5 genes in their survival gene bracket that actually are coded for making glutathione.
Okay.
And so we're able to turn those on. So in 1994, Japanese scientists discovered a messenger protein. They called it nuclear factor 2, or NRF2 for short, NRF2. And it was just a messenger pathway. A little protein goes into the nucleus and targets the antioxidant response area in the genome. And that, in a sense, turns on those genes that make those enzymes, in a sense, kind of like when you were a small child. Right. That turned me on.
Yeah, that turns me on too. Someone who talks about, living life as a modern longevitarian, right? How can we turn those pathways on? Because, especially if you're someone like me, right? My story is and is well documented here on the podcast and on my website and all of those things, that both of my parents got cancer. They were age 55, right? And they're both still around. They're survivors, right? My dad, had to go. He's a couple years older, so these were a couple years apart that this happened. But they're both 55 years old. Dad had to go through chemo, had to have surgery, prostate removed. Mom was different, but she had to have a hysterectomy because she had uterine cancer, which is one of the fastest growing.
Yeah, sorry to hear that.
And so, well, for the link that I had put together, right, was and this may be in combination with it, was the importance of iodine, because those are glandular pieces that we're so deficient on iodine in our diets. And so I've been, last week was really kind of the iodine week. I talked about my experience in taking iodine and those type of things, which is super cool. And this week, or over the last week or 10 days, I've been doing a candida cleanse. And so I'm itchy all over, and I think I'm going through some little detox things like that. So it's like, I need to open some more detox pathways because it's all kind of bottling up in me right now. So, yeah, I've been kind of scratchy all over, but it's been a cool experience to go through this, die off symptoms. But back to what we're talking about really is, when I look at like my heritage, right? My mom's mom had lupus for 13 years before she passed away. Now she was in her 70s when she passed away,
Hmm.
but she had lupus. Then you go to my dad's side. My dad's dad had cancer and passed away at age 62, and so he must have gotten some sort of prostate cancer,
Right.
or cancer that moved to bone cancer, and it wasn't diagnosed and caught early like it was with my dad. My dad's mom had type 2 diabetes. She smoked, and so she had lung cancer and that type of stuff.
Wow.
And then my dad's best friends, right? So this is where I really started figuring out like is what we put on it in our body because it's a cultural environmental thing. And I was putting these pieces together before I ever had heard of Bruce Lipton and epigenetics, right, and that type of stuff. Where my dad's, which was my uncle, but it was by marriage, right? So my dad's brother-in-law diagnosed cancer, 54, 55 years old, passed away just 60 in a couple months. My dad's two other best friends, one prostate cancer passed away, the other colon cancer passed away. And
Mm.
so the only common thing I could see with all of them is that, long term was living in South Carolina and eating the southern version of the standard American diet,
Yeah.
which has got a slightly more fried food and a little bit
Right.
more pulled pork barbecue, especially in Columbia, South Carolina, where we're from. And so I saw that connection. I'm like, okay, how can I make these changes? But what you're talking about, this NRF2 or NRF2 pathway is like next level stuff because that's
Yeah.
not just going, hey, I'm going to stop eating pulled pork and I'm going to be a vegetarian or vegan and cut out this and that. And I'm going
Right.
to now intermittent fast or those type of things because those could send similar signals, especially when you get into autophagy and cleaning up bad cells and that type of stuff. But so so tell me what really happens with this NRF2 pathway and what is really going on to impact lower disease and increase our health span really.
Yeah. So let me just digress just for a second. So you mentioned your father,
Right.
and your mother. My dad was fair, I mean, even though he wasn't in great shape and he didn't never worked out, didn't exercise, wasn't focusing on health. He just had a constitution that was like energy and strong. I
Mm,
mean, he would go on mission trips and outwork people that were 20 years younger than him. And at 75, he loved rafting. Okay,
mm,
whitewater rafting. My sister took him on this trip, and he was always the guy that was like, let's do another run, do another run until dark, right?
right.
And he did one run and he's just tired. My sister says, "Hey, Dad, you want to do another run?" He goes, "I think I just need to take a nap."
Mm,
And she knew something's wrong.
mm,
And within just a few, a month or so, they finally diagnosed him with amyloidosis. I'd never heard of it. I did some research into it. He was dead, Scott, in 30 days after diagnosis. I mean,
wow.
take this, the first sign was that they diagnosed him with diabetes.
Mm,
He wasn't overweight. He didn't fit the deal, right?
mm,
Um, Amyloidosis is like an amyloid protein that basically plugs every organ, every you know vessel to your organ, and so you just have organ shutdown all at the same time.
mm,
And the different doctors, the nephrologist looking here, the cardiologist looking here, and everyone looking here, and finally a nurse practitioner says, "Hey, guys, um, we got this unusually healthy man, was never taking any medication, didn't have any health issues. All of a sudden, his body's crashing. You're looking in the wrong place." And they finally did a blood test, found out with amyloidosis. These kind of things, they really spur us on, Scott, to kind of figure out. And another thing, I'll digress one more. When I was 18, I for summers, between college, I worked at this hospital and was on the nursing home side of the hospital.
mm,
Imagine being 18 years old, you walk into these rooms and there are 50 and 60-year-old people bedridden. I became very convinced that I did not want to get old. I was never going to age like that. And I was never going to be bedridden in a bed because I had claustrophobia from my sister, put me upside down in a sleeping bag.
mm.
And she put me in the dryer one time.
Yeah.
But another funny story. So little claustrophobia. I see these people locked up in a bed and I'm going, okay, I'm going to be a health nut for the rest of my life. In fact, my wife and I were plant-based for the last 20 plus years. I mean, 80% organic. I mean, 100% organic, 80% raw food, focusing on nutrients. And we still had health issues. Like, what is going on? We still need something, right? Like you said, it's the next level. And when you're activating, you can activate NRF2 with exercise.
Mm-hmm.
You can activate NRF2 with broccoli sprouts. You know, cruciferous vegetables contain a sulforaphane, they call it.
Right.
It's
Yep.
like the gold standard for NRF2 activation.
Mm-hmm.
What I've found is I found a way to activate even more than that. And when we did that, you're actually affecting up to 500 genes. And those 500 genes, you know, some of them are antioxidant enzyme producing, some of them are anti-inflammatory enzyme producing, anti-fibrotic. When I was in physical therapy school and doing cadaver anatomy, you know, the organs of the older people would be, you know, all shriveled up, all scarred up. I didn't even put this together at that point. But when you have oxidative stress happening, you have these genes that are pro-fibrotic, pro-scar tissue. And if your joints are feeling stiff, Scott, guaranteed your liver, your kidney, your heart are also getting stiff because those genes are in every one of your cells. And when you have oxidative stress happening, like you said, those damages, it creates a scar. It scars up with pro-fibrotic, you know, activation.
Right.
And so we're basically balancing that system. We're dropping the pro-fibrotic down and the anti-fibrotic. We're in a sense we're leveling the playing field, so to speak. Basically, it's like resetting those 500 genes to the level you had as a small child. Now, you have 25,000 genes. So not all those are active in every one of your organs because what's happening in the liver is different than what's happening in the kidney.
Mm-hmm.
But these 500 genes that we're dealing with, these survival genes, are active in every one of your cells. They help keep those cells survive to do whatever that organ needs to do to make you healthy.
Right. So basically, what you're able to do is to turn back the clock on their antioxidant production to where it's actually fighting those things to like we were younger, right? So basically, I love the way that David Sinclair puts this. He's a PhD, research scientist at Harvard. He wrote the book Lifespan, and
Yeah.
he talks about that aging is a disease within itself, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
these are the things that happen, and we can, like any other disease, there's preventative measures. It could be diet, could be exercise, could be intermittent fasting, or getting sleep and those type of things. But there's also these other ways that you can do it. Now he has another whole way of doing that. So what are ways that you talked about the ways, but how have you found to actually increase this antioxidant production through NRF2? I mean, what are you specifically doing for that?
So I was just minding my own business in my practice about 6.5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and a patient wanted to share some information with me, and they didn't really have any scientific background, and so I blew them off. And plus, I think the ego of a health professional maybe was the part of the problem. And so I didn't really want to listen. But my daughter, fortunately for me and for many others, my daughter listened to it, and she decided that I need to take a look at this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found out that they found a combination of 5 herbs in very small amounts, under therapeutic dose, so to speak, that when you put them together, they activate NRF2 like 135 points. So
Mm-hmm.
sulforaphane is like 22 points.
Wow.
Everyone loves turmeric or turmeric. That activates about 7 points.
Mm-hmm.
So if turmeric is helping you, guess what?
Right.
This herbal blend is going to really help you.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, I know that, like, I've had, I've noticed like things where I bought at one point from Trader Joe's, I bought this ghee, this like Indian style ghee that had, all these different spices in it, cardamom and turmeric and all those things. And I would make something with that, and my wedding ring would get looser, right? After I ate, right? I would mix it with lentils or something like that. And I was like, wow, this is pretty cool, right? Because I could tell inflammation was going down, like immediately. I was doing something that worked, right?
Yeah.
And then, Dr. Rhonda Patrick, she's also a research scientist, she's PhD, talks about sulforaphane and broccoli sprouts and all of those things. So I've watched multiple podcast interviews talk about that. I've made broccoli sprouts. I've bought broccoli sprouts.
Yeah, it's in
I've
there.
even looked at other ways to get sulfur in. I mean, you can't see it, but one of these Dr. Terry Walls, right? The Walls protocol.
Hmm.
Her basically put her MS in remission through paleo principles with her diet, where she was eating nine. Now she's over 6 foot tall, but 9 cups of vegetables a day. You got to adjust this for yourself, right? And three of those cups, or a third of the vegetables she was eating, was sulfur based, right? So she was doing
Mm.
this same thing by eating these sulfur based vegetables, and bright colored, and then also leafy green. So those were the three categories that she broke this into, where she was eating like wild caught or grass fed protein. So these paleo principles, because she's a doctor, she's an MD, and she went to the dietitians. Your wife's a dietitian. I
Yeah.
was director of food and beverage at a hospital. I had PhD dietitians reporting to me, and I asked them tons of questions. And this is actually, I was age 40 and I lost 40 pounds, and I was asking them tons of questions, and they thought I was crazy because I was going into intermittent fasting and doing that type of stuff, right? And she knew calorie restriction was good, but it was always the advice was a wide variety of foods, right? It was always kind of the advice to get, right?
Yeah.
I would get, and so, but a really interesting thing is like putting this, you know, sulforaphane, as which, like you said, is the gold standard everybody talks about, and this is, you know, over 10 times more productive than that.
Yeah. So if sulforaphane's helping you, guess what? This is really going to help you. Like for
Right.
example, for me, I was 57 when I first started taking this.
Okay.
I hadn't admitted to my wife yet, but I was getting older, Scott. I
Mm,
was feeling stiff in the morning, especially on a Wednesday morning.
mm,
Every Tuesday, and I swim. I've been a triathlete for many years. I swim I swim 3 days a week. I lift weights twice a week. I run. I was playing basketball on Tuesday nights with a bunch of young kids. I call them, like the oldest was 30,
mm,
and the mean was probably 20, 25. And
right.
I'm the old guy out there. I'm in great shape, so I could actually run with them, stay with them. Actually, they'd get tired before I would.
Right.
But in the morning, I felt like a train wreck,
Mm,
and I was remembering back, like I did not want to get old. I didn't want to get old. I wasn't even admitting it to my wife. Like, and the 15th day, I woke up as a Wednesday morning, and we have winter here. Like I said, we have to put socks on. So
right.
I bent over to put the socks on, Scott, and I stood right back up again.
Mm,
And I bent over. I did it 3 times in a row. I was thinking, am I having an out of body experience? I looked back. Am I still in the bed? You know,
right.
I'm not. And it's been that way ever since. Unless I have an injury, I don't wake up stiff. And I'm thinking, okay, if I'm not waking up stiff in my body, guess what my organs are doing?
Right.
They're getting less stiff. So
Right. And stiffness is basically inflammation, right?
yeah,
It
like imagine you're in a spaceship,
mhm,
okay, and you're in outer space, and you got 306 trillion free asteroids coming your way.
right.
Every single one of those that hits your spaceship is going to cause a scar,
Right.
and inflammation is the answer to a scar.
Hmm.
And that chronic inflammation, well, we all know that inflammation is the root, right, of all disease.
Right.
Chronic inflammation. Well, guess what causes chronic inflammation? Oxidative stress.
Mm.
So we're at the root
We're at the
of the
root.
root.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's gosh, that's amazing. So is there any connection between like toxin overload and oxidative stress and disease that you've seen that this has been able to help as well?
Yes. Well, in fact, I looked up on PubMed this morning. It's the Library of Medicine at the National Institute of Health.
Hmm.
244,424 studies linking oxidative stress to the known chronic diseases.
Hmm.
On NRF2, there's 17,317 studies
Mm.
on NRF2, and most of them have been since 2009 and up.
Right.
And you remind me of the question.
Well, it's about toxic connection between toxin overload and NFR2 and oxidative stress, right?
So when they did a study that showed that activating this pathway can turn on glutathione production.
Mm.
And glutathione, as you know, as you re-energize that glutathione, it takes out toxins, re-energizes, takes out toxins, re-energizes, takes out toxins. So getting that glutathione, I mean, my wife was having some health issues, and I can't say diseases because we can't make claims, but her rhythm was off.
Mm-hmm.
and her heart rhythm was off. She was having, like asthmatic type, some breathing issues going on. And in 3 weeks of activating, those issues just kind of disappeared.
Mm.
And it was just exciting for me because I married a younger woman. She was 5 years younger than me. And I thought, this is cool. I have this younger wife, and she was getting older than me.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned the five herbs. So in this product, what are the five herbs?
So it's a specific combination of milk thistle,
Mm-hmm.
turmeric, bacopa, ashwagandha, and green tea. The
Mm-hmm.
interesting thing is that the green tea is a negative by itself.
Okay.
The most powerful one was actually milk thistle.
Mm.
But the combination that they actually patented it because they actually found a way to put those together that activated that 135 points.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was exciting to me when I mean, I love broccoli sprouts. I love eating salad. The first thing I eat when I sit down for lunch is a huge salad. Have a big bowl. Probably feed a family, in United States, for a week. You
Right.
know,
Right.
and I love sprouts and all that. But this is just beyond and above that. So.
Right. I'd started putting sprouts in smoothies, right? I was making these, keto style smoothies with some avocado,
Mm,
sour greens, putting it's as bitter as it can get, right? I mean, when you're, you know, pulverizing sprouts and power greens and you're trying to like, hey, let me put a quarter cup of blueberries in here because I can only handle this many carbs. You're definitely like going, how can, what can I do to make this actually taste okay and get this down, right? And so you're like, doing that. So, and I'm a firm believer that because, and this is why the word modern is in this brand, in this business, on this show, all these different things, is because we are combating different things than our predecessors, ancestors ever did, right? When you look to the blue zones, and someone who maybe, over 100 years old, things like glyphosate were never introduced in their life until they were probably 60, 70, maybe 80 years old, right? It's like, or if at all at this point, depending on what part of the world they live in, right?
mm-hmm.
And so we have to combat these things in a different way than and activate those to get that, because heck, I'd like to get past 62, right? I'd like to get past 72, and not I'm not sitting here saying, hey, I want to, like Dave Asprey, I want to be 180, or Tom Bilyeu, I want to live forever, those type of things. I want to be strong for longer, not strong and linger,
You want
right?
a health span. You want a
Yeah,
health span,
health.
not a lifespan. Health span.
Exactly, right. So I think what happens is I'm saying I want to increase health span, and be strong for longer. And that's the website, strongforlonger.com. It'll take you to Modern Longevitarian, in an effort to, to maybe extend lifespan, but I want to live life to the fullest, right? I want to have this micro approach, live for the day, carpe diem type thing, and with an eye on the macro as well, right?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want to like go, hey, I'm going to have burger and fries every day, and I'm living in the moment, and I'm carpe seizing the day, right? And forget about what's happening tomorrow, right? I really want to focus on both of those.
Right.
So at some point, we're got a little bit of the hare, but we also got a big piece of the tortoise in this race, right? To do those type of things. But I love how you were able to flip this around and able to have great Wednesday mornings, right? Playing basketball, and are you still playing ball with the young kids now? Are you still
You know
doing that?
what I do now is they kind of quit doing that. I play ultimate frisbee now,
Okay.
and so I'm the oldest guy on the team. I'm like the team mascot. I'm 63, out there running, diving on the field still to catch the frisbee.
uh,
You know,
always the athlete, right? Going for it.
yeah, one thing that really inspired me is I was 29, Scott, and I was going to do my first triathlon.
Hmm.
And I'm always been a good swimmer. I swam in college, and actually I swam fast enough. I was looking at the trial times. I actually swam fast enough to maybe even think about moving on with it. And then I thought, I was in Loma Linda, one of those blue zones, right? I'm at Loma Linda University,
Right.
and I'm just swimming for exercise. And I just thought, I'm going to time myself. And I was like right there. They were doing time trials at that time, and I thought, should I just like quit this career thing, PT, and take a break and and I thought, you know what, that's just a short-term thing. PT is long-term. And I
Hmm.
made the logical decision, let's say.
Right. Right.
Um, But here I was, 29, living in Northern California, my first triathlon. Um, I jumped in the water. I'm out like number 3, right? I jump on my bike, which I honestly hadn't trained on very much. It was my first one, and I didn't really like cycling at that time. And this guy who's 53 years old just zips by me like not like I'm sitting still.
Wow.
I felt like I was on one of those little tiny, the old little child's bike, and he goes flying by me. I thought, well, I'll catch him on the run. So I got back on the run. I could see him. We're getting near the finish line. I could actually see him ahead of me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't catch him. He's 53 years old. They interview him on TV, and at 50 years old, he's 53. At 50 years old, his doctor friend said, "You know what? You're a heart attack waiting to happen. You're overweight. You got all these health issues. You're gonna die soon.
Mm-hmm.
Exercise, start exercising." So he got into marathons. Marathons are boring for him, so he got into triathlons, and he beat me. So I trained so hard that next year on the bike.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I had him on the swim, I had him on the run, but the bike I trained. I went back that next year and he wasn't there, and I just kind of thank God he wasn't, because it just inspired me that this 53-year-old man could beat a 29-year-old in excellent shape.
Right.
And that gave me that health span concept, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of gave me that. And then one day in my office here in Kauai, a guy walks in my office. He was 70 plus, and from like the neck down, he looked like a very fit 35 or 40. I mean, very fit. He just got back from New Zealand, competing in the Ironman over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, you know what? I want to do the same for those younger than me, and be that inspiration that can say, because when I was younger, I didn't have that. I never saw that. I was never around anyone that was older, who was athletic or who was in shape, who was in good health.
Right.
And so I really enjoy being out there in the ultimate field, and kind of being an example to those young guys. Trying to guard someone in their 20s and 30s is a huge challenge.
Right. Yeah.
But I do my best at it, and it seems to inspire them as well. So
Right. And that's one of the things too, right? I'm 48. I'll be 49, soon. And so I love hanging out with, people in their 70s and older, and talking to them. A couple quick stories. One is that, I remember my last restaurant job. I got called over um, to I want to say, by the way, let me interrupt for a second. I want to say hey to Michael for watching, and also to John Jensen. Thanks for tuning in, and the comments. And yeah, this is super interesting. I love talking to Rusty. This is we met on LinkedIn, and we've had 2 calls prior to this, and this is our live show. So the conversation's continuing between us. But I got a server came over and said, "Hey, table 10, it's a birthday. Can you go comp off the free dessert? And by the way, she's 95." Right. So I go over and I comp the dessert. I go over there, and she's with her 2 nieces. Right. So so it's three ladies at the table. And I asked her what the secret is, and we were just, chatting away and those things. And she said, "Yeah, I plan to live to be 105." And then her niece looked up to me and said, "That's the secret. She has a goal." Right. She has a goal to 105. So she had 10 more years to go. And it was a super, super cool situation there. And then another one is actually a really good friend of mine. We met at our church here in Park City, Utah. Bob Wholesale was a mentor of mine, like really strong mentor for 5 years. I helped him cook men's breakfast, for the group. And he's 78 now. He intermittent fast almost every day. He at one point was doing a 36-hour fast once, sometimes twice a week. He's keto. I was about 36 hours fasted when he and I went on a 6-mile hike. And I was struggling to keep up with him. I promise you that it was a struggle. I didn't, he turned around and goes, "Are you okay?" I'm like, um, but with all practical things, right? I was, really deep into ketosis and fasted, and those type of
yeah.
things. And it was a little warm out. And that was right after, it was this summer when I came back from California, and, the altitude was kind of messing with me a little bit. But no excuses. Here Bob's, he's keto, he's fasting, he's 78, and I'm struggling to keep up with him. So I had him on my podcast, right? So Modern Longeveritarian podcast. and we talked about all of those things and how he and his wife have found keto and how it works for them, right, and what they're doing with that. So what else do we need to cover about NRF2, NERV2, or an oxidative stress? What if we missed anything along the way to get back to what we really wanted to talk about here?
Well, I mean, we could get into the deep science of it, but I don't think that would be helpful on this show. But essentially, understanding that NRF2 is very natural. It's something that happens as a young child, and when they measure oxidative stress happening as you age, it's just generally just like a ramp up, and the 80-year-old is in fact an 80-year-old mitochondrial function is already like 5% of what it was as a child,
Mm,
and oxidative stress damages the mitochondria. You're mentioning toxicity.
right.
Every pharmaceutical product we take causes oxidative stress.
Mm,
Your mitochondria DNA are very, very vulnerable,
right.
and that's why cyanide kills you.
Mm,
Cyanide stops the mitochondria from working.
wow.
With NRF2, we're in a sense protecting mitochondria as well,
Hmm.
and so um, it's not just making endogenous enzymes, as well. It's actually doing there's we could go over some of those genes, but basically those genes resetting. We're experiencing. I had a friend, for example, who had MS,
Hmm.
and I'm not saying she was cured. I'm just saying her doctor said after a year and a half of doing this, in addition to her healthy lifestyle, she was the healthiest patient he's ever seen in his entire career.
Mm,
She's called me the other day, Scott, with a confession. She says, I thought I was cured.
hmm.
People say, well, how long do I need to do this? Well, how long do you need to do keto? How long do you need to eat healthily? How long do you need to exercise? It's an everyday lifestyle concept.
Right.
But she quit thinking, oh, I'm good. And she called me. She says, Rusty, I could hardly get off the couch.
Mm,
I'd gone backwards so far. She got back on the program, and within a few months, she was, feeling right back up into
right.
where she was. So I think that maybe we could address maybe mitochondria just a little bit, because we actually have the evolution of the process. We've actually have another activator that activates the mitochondrial biogenesis, which means more mitochondria.
Hmm.
Scott, when I added the mitochondrial biogenesis product, I doubled my strokes per breath in my swimming sprints.
Mm,
I had been at a constant level for about 5-6 years. I had this many strokes, sprinting for 30 seconds, resting for a minute, doing like this intervals, right? And trying to keep my muscle mass up, right? As I age, just running and long distance swimming doesn't keep your muscle mass up. So I was trying to do that.
hmm.
And in 30 days of adding the NRF1 mitochondrial biogenesis activator, kind of same thing, same process, different messenger, activating that process, I doubled my strokes in 30 days that
Mm,
I could do in a breath.
right.
And so that's kind of a piece that we could maybe talk about a bit is how mitochondria and oxidative stress and NRF2 kind of interrelate. So if you looked up NRF2 on PubMed, you'd notice that there's mitochondrial uh, linkage. So
Right, is connected there. We could talk about that. I was actually, we talked about this before, you and I, but not online or anything where everybody can see this. But the kind of the connection or how it is connected between, like, because other people that may be in this longevity space hear people talk about telomeres, or hear them talk about sirtuins. If you listen to David Sinclair,
right,
this type of
right.
thing. So how is this, the same or different, as those other buzzwords we've heard about lengthening telomeres, or the sirtuin pathway, in NRF2, right? So what's similar with that?
Well, if there's actually a scientific paper or a graph that I saw that linked NRF2,
Hmm.
so oxidative stress issue, NRF1, and the sirtuins,
Okay.
all three together. It's like three juggling three balls at the same. They're all in that same space. They're all interrelated, interactive. And
Right.
so sirtuins you're getting by the fasting, okay? With the
Okay.
studies they did with mice, right? And they starved this, essentially reduced their caloric intake drastically, right? And
Right.
they found out their genes are making these sirtuins.
Hmm.
Well, those are super important. And I've been doing fasting for a long time. I did 10-day fast. I remember hiking up Sleeping Giant here in Kauai on the 10th day of the fast. I felt so light and so like I was just buzzing. I wanted to jump off the top of the mountain. I mean, it's
Right,
just like
right. Yeah.
I had to back up and not even look off the edge. So yeah, fasting is
Just because
cool.
you're fasting doesn't mean you can fly. Okay. Just so you know.
Yeah, I had to figure that out. But
Yeah.
I have hang glided before, so it's there, right? It's just
Right.
that feeling of wanting to go.
Right.
So
Right.
I had to just back off a bit. But yeah, so sirtuins are super important. And when they took the mice and changed their genes to not produce sirtuin, they didn't get that lifespan. So the sirtuin activity, mitochondrial biogenesis, and nerve2 are because the NAD cycle within that sirtuins, because NAD is going to help you produce sirtuins. It feeds the nerve 2, it feeds the nerve 1. I mean, just they all interrelate, and so we actually can activate genes that recycle NAD.
Mm-hmm.
So we've evolved into 3 activators now. We have nerve 2,
Mm-hmm.
oxidative stress issue, and all those endogenous enzymes. Nerve 1 for the mitochondrial biogenesis, and then we can activate sirtuins 100% in 24 hours.
Mm.
And when you do the fasting, you get 94% in 24 hours. And so we're actually um, able to, and I feel that by adding that other activator, I feel that same blessing of the intermittent fasting, even when I don't. Before, if I miss that, because we would fast on Fridays, just eat breakfast and fast until Saturday morning.
Mm-hmm.
If I missed that, I knew it. I felt it.
Right.
I don't anymore. I don't feel
Right.
that, which is
Yeah.
kind of cool.
Fasting has been a cornerstone of me for 9 years. I was 39 December, 9 years ago. I went for a well visit and I realized I was a fat vegetarian, right? 40 pounds overweight. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? And, and that's when I discovered intermittent fasting, and it's been a huge blessing for me. And another thing I've heard about, and we can talk migrating into mitochondrial, production and function and those type of things, was with the Wim Hof method, which I don't know if you in Hawaii, if you ever heard of Wim Hof or not. He's an
Yes,
Iceman, right?
my son follows him.
Right. So for me, it's been 5 years. But what happens is it converts white fat into brown fat, and brown fat is basically the white fat with this, super condensed mitochondrial growth, because you're trying to build energy to build, for thorough neogenesis and those type of things, right? So, um, and, and so those are, maybe, is that a connection there? Like maybe what you're talking about, mitochondrial function, and there's a way you can do it naturally by cold exposure, but you also saying you could take a supplement for that as well, right?
Exactly. So and I love when we love snowboarding, our family, and we go to Mount Bachelor there in Oregon, and don't go there, don't crowd it out. But yeah, we'd find these resorts we stay in, they'd have a pool, and it might even be closed. We'd just fold the thing back and jump in and
Mm-hmm.
do this cold water stuff. And I love. My wife and I joke about in the wintertime here in Kauai. I know most of you don't believe me, but it does actually get cool. The water cools down a little bit, and we call ourselves the wimpy Winhoffs.
Oh, right,
Um,
right, right.
we go in, and my wife even sometimes will wear a little neoprene top because it's chilly,
It's
and I
chilly.
and I love the cool part. But yeah, activating with this activator, I'm getting much of that same benefit. I still love that cold water though. I'll just jump in the shower and just go right on cold. But I tell you what, I love visiting Portland and other places like that, Oregon, where when in the wintertime when I can actually just put that shower on cold and get that. But here, it's just not cold enough
Right. You're
in
right.
Hawaii.
Well, yeah, I get it. Right. I've been practicing some sort of cold shower going on 6.5 years now. And God, I can't believe it's been been this long. But and Wim Hof has been 5 of that. I didn't discover Wim Hof until I'd have been taking Scottish showers for a year and a half, and it's an absolute game changer. I, it's like drinking like 47 cups of coffee, right? I mean, it really is it. And so I've taken cold showers in Southern California, and I've taken cold showers in South Carolina when I go back to visit my family. I've taken cold showers at 7,000 feet here in Park City, Utah, but none have ever been any colder than the cold showers in Estes Park, Colorado. the cold showers there. I don't know what it is, but when I worked at the Stanley Hotel, I was staying in a new wing of the hotel, um, and I was taking cold showers there. And Estes is this is a summer resort because it has the Rocky Mountain National Park there, um, and but the winter times, the wind blows. I mean, it was tough to do like a Wim Hof, true Wim Hof experience there because I mean the wind was just the wind will and the snow blowing and the shade and all those things really compound all those things. So there's a connection here. We've talked about the Saturns, the mitochondria. We've got the connection with nerve two, and how you're building synergy between those three. Right? There's a
Yeah.
confluence with this stuff, um, and which is gosh, I'm even kind of struggling to put together what the next step might be or the next question would be. And this is the
Well,
joys of being live, right? And
yeah.
it's kind of we're swinging without a net here.
While you're
But
thinking, let me maybe I'll say this.
okay, go
So
ahead.
to make it simple to understand, imagine, Scott, you're in a room with a motor running and all the windows are shut.
Okay.
The motor is the mitochondria.
Okay.
You ever followed a car or the diesel truck or something that's putting out exhaust and you quickly hit the recycle on
Yeah.
the car? So
Exactly.
my wife reacts to that stuff and I just hit that recycle, just reflex.
Right.
And so you have to have some, when your mitochondria aren't working well, they're producing more exhaust called free radicals.
Okay.
And so we're with nerve 2, we're actually making those enzymes to eliminate a lot of the free radicals.
Hmm.
But when we add nerve 1, we're making the mitochondria more powerful and more of them, but we're also making them more efficient.
Okay.
And so an efficient, like a new car, doesn't put out the exhaust that an old car does,
Right. Exactly.
right? And so then when you add the sirtuin piece and the NAD cycle into that, it's like putting higher octane fuel in your car.
Mm.
And
Right.
it's just more efficient. So the sirtuin piece to the nerve 1 to the nerve 2 is like having this car that it puts out very, very efficient exhaust, and because you have a higher octane fuel at the same time. And then we're also activating oh, go ahead. Yeah,
Well, no, I go keep going because I got it. Keep going. I know what I'm going to say. So
okay, so when you hit the accelerator, right, and you're turning that mitochondria on, you're getting more power, but you're also getting more power more efficiently. And that's why I double my strokes per breath. When I added the NAD piece, the NAD recycling gene activation, and got my sirtuins going, I increased it again, Scott, another 70%. So I'm 63 years old. I've been at the same level since I was 50 to 57. And all of a sudden I doubled it with the nerve 2 and nerve 1. And then I went up another 70%, adding the recycling NAD gene activation that turned on the sirtuin activity. So those three are definitely, it's just making that system very efficient.
right. Well, you're speaking my language. I grew up racing go karts, so we're talking about engine rebuilds or any of those type of things. I totally understand that because it, plus we have a 1967 Jeep that we rebuilt years ago, and so when you're looking at something that's 50, I mean, this was a 1967 Jeep. You got to think about that's it's a 53-year-old engine, and technology, and it's got a Buick Oddfire V6, and you got to pull the choke on it and all those type of things, right, to get it running, and that type of stuff, and the exhaust on that just smells different, right? I mean, that engine was designed to run on leaded gas, right? I
Yeah.
mean, most people watching the show may not even know what leaded gas is because they don't even sell it anymore, right?
Right, right.
Right. And so maybe people looking into health span and longevity probably know what leaded gas is,
That's true.
but my point is, you know, um, like you could have an engine, that a car that has, 200 250,000 miles on it, and you crank it up, a big puff of smoke comes out.
Yeah.
That's because the seals around the valves have worn to the point that a little bit of oil gets into the cylinder, right? It leaks in. That smoke is boom, and that's what you're talking about. This mitochondrial inefficiency, right? They're putting out more free radicals, and
Right.
because our NRF2 pathway, we're not creating this what you call endogenous, right? Enzymes or antioxidants. And what people may not realize is that your vitamin C, your vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E that you may be taking in your multi, that's more like an exogenous, right? That's more like
Yeah.
external.
One and done.
Yeah, one
One
and
and
done,
done.
right? And even if you're going like, hey, I'm going to take 10,000 milligrams of vitamin C with this time release thing, you're still not even coming close to what you're talking about producing internally, right?
For example, just one enzyme, SOD, superoxide dismutase, one enzyme
Mm-hmm.
can take out up to 1 million free radicals per second.
Wow.
There's 186,400 seconds in a day. That's 186,400 million that
Mm-hmm.
one enzyme can take out. I mean, you can't eat enough vitamin C. You can't eat enough blueberries. You can't eat enough of those direct antioxidant, suppliers. I mean, you might even. I remember adding up so many glasses of wine, so many blueberries, so many oranges, so many vitamin C, and all together, you got maybe 4 million direct antioxidant molecules.
Right.
4 million. We're talking one enzyme of SOD, 186,400 million in one day. Imagine 37 trillion cells that you have in your body. Let's just say each of those makes an enzyme called SOD. That's 37 trillion million per second. And then don't forget to eat good foods with vitamin C in them. Don't hear what I'm saying here. But you cannot really address the oxidative stress issue, 306 trillion, with that's not how your body's made. Your body's designed to make these enzymes that actually do the majority of the heavy lifting.
Right. And this goes back to what I've been saying for a long time is that we're not going to eat our way out of this, right?
No.
Especially like if you're being, even if you're eating a pretty decent diet, right? And you have a couple of cheat days or, like a couple of chocolate chip cookies or those type of things, that's stealing away from, putting in whatever, the blueberries are or things like that, right?
Right.
We're not going to make that up, by eating, because if you actually did the research, and you and I have done the research, right? So if you've done the research and you start going, I'm going to build a diet that checks every box, right? We're 6,000 calories in, right? We're like that. We're like 100 pounds overweight, type 2 diabetic, because we're trying to check all these boxes, right? To try to hit
That's
these
right.
things, right? And it's just not going to work out the right way. So finding different ways for this to happen are super cool. So,
Right.
Rusty, how can people find you online?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn under Rusty Cottrell, but also I'm on Facebook under Debbie letter N and Rusty Cottrell.
Okay.
I'm also on Facebook with my own name, Rusty Cottrell.
Okay.
But I also have an email,
Awesome.
Rusty CSPT. Used to be Cottrell Sports Physical Therapy. I'm retired now, but I kept the email, Rusty CSPT at gmail.com.
Okay. Perfect.
I'd love to, hook up, link arms to people who want to also pioneer this because hardly anyone knows about it. I get great joy after sharing this with people, friends and family, and seeing their lives transformed. It's awesome to be a part of it.